So I just got back from a week of traveling, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the camera gear I brought and what worked really well for me. Just share some thoughts. This is a little bit of a mishmash video, but I'm going to jump right into it. I brought with me, or we brought with us, a 5D Mark III and the 24 to 70 2.8 Mark II lens. Really nice combination, but not the lightest. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. I also brought a 70 to 300 with us as well for getting a little bit closer in some shots. One of the things that's really nice about the 5D Mark III is the dual card slots, and I shot with a compact flash card in one, full RAW, and in the SD card slot I shot with a little EyeFi card. And the EyeFi card is set up for direct mode. I have it set up for direct mode, shooting small JPEGs, not RAWs, small JPEGs to the Nexus. Now, this, I'm not sure if it's a firmware update that's recent or what, but this worked really, really well. I've had lots of trouble with direct mode and EyeFi cards in the past. I've gotten them to work, but not as consistently as I would like. I have to say on this trip, it worked flawlessly. I had it set up so that, and you need to do some of this setup before you go off in the first place. I had it set up so that the EyeFi card would only send the pictures that I protected. And a neat feature of the 5D Mark III is some of these buttons on the back are assignable, and the rate button back here can be assigned to not rate a picture, but to protect it. And so it would be really easy to take 5-6 shots, hit the play button, look at those pictures, find one I liked, hit the rate button, and in a few seconds, literally in a few seconds, it would be beamed over to the Nexus. And I didn't always have the Nexus with me. Sometimes I left it back in the hotel room, but in the evenings you'd get back, I'd either have rated pictures during the day, or I'd spend 15 minutes before dinner and rate a few pictures. They would all show up on the Nexus. Then I would use the hotel's Wi-Fi to send those pictures up online. Actually, there's a really neat app for Android that I really like. Once the pictures come over in the EyeFi app, you can then access them from any picture app. And there's one, I think it's called Grid HD, that I really like. And it allows you to make these neat little collages. And it's Photo Grid. It's called Photo Grid. I'll put a link up to that. But it just works really nice. And then you can share that photo collage online straight from there. And that works really well because you're shooting small JPEGs. You don't want to be, you could shoot large JPEGs and things of that sort, but if you're just sharing to Facebook while you're on the go, I really like the speed and ease of use of shooting the smaller JPEGs. So that's the EyeFi card sitting in there, and a compact flash card sitting in there for the full RAWs, and then once I got home, I downloaded all of those. The other thing that I took along, and this was its first real test, I'd just been playing with this some prior, is the little GPS GPE2 logger that fits up in your hot shoe of your 5D Mark III. And as you take pictures, it tags those with the locations. And I really like that. To come back home, I've loaded all of the pictures into Lightroom, and almost all of them are already tagged. In general, this seems to get a lock very, very quickly. Most of the time, and a couple of times where it did seem to take a little bit longer, I would just start shooting anyway, and by the 4th or 5th picture in that location usually, it would have a lock. And so now I can easily go back and say, all right, these pictures 1, 2, and 3 don't have a location. Here's the 4th one, it does. Let me look where that is. Let's drag the other 3 in there. So very easily you can use one of the other shots as a reference, which works quite nicely. Now, how did I carry all of this around? Well, I've talked about this bag before. This is the Vanguard 18, and I carried it all in here. Let me take this GPS back off for a second because I'll show you that it fits quite nicely in here, even with the lens hood out and extended like that. I shouldn't say it fits quite nicely. It is snug, but it fits. And the Nexus, I didn't always carry it around, as I said. Sometimes I left that behind. But the Nexus can sit down on the side between the padding and the edge of the bag, and that can all zip up. Now, I have a rabbit strap, but I didn't even bring it on this trip. I didn't mean to leave it behind, but I did. And I was completely fine with that because what I really like about this is when the camera is in here, it's completely protected, it's out of sight. It's protected from elements and things of that sort. And because this Vanguard bag has that upper zipper, you can just kind of pick the camera out, take your pictures, put it back in. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about what if I wanted to bring other lenses in a second. But let me show you one other feature, bug, I don't know what we'll call it. When the GPS unit is on, it doesn't fit so well. And so what I started doing in those cases was putting it face down, and I would leave the bag open. If I needed to close the bag because we're getting a little sprinkle or we're in an area where I didn't want the camera visible at all, I would pop the GPS unit off and put that in a side. The GPS unit is powered on its own by a AA battery, and so it can continue to log your position. It doesn't need to be on the camera to work. Battery life for that GPS unit in general was quite excellent, but I did notice that, now let me say this, I'm jumping around here, as I said, this is going to be a little bit of a mishmash, but I did notice I never turn my camera off. Or I shouldn't say never, I very rarely turn my camera off. I almost always just let it go to sleep. It uses very, very little battery power when it is asleep, and it's ready to go as soon as you pick it up and half press the shutter. What I noticed on a couple of mornings that I forgot to take the GPS unit logger off, and I would leave that on as well, is usually that would continue to work. Its battery life was again excellent. But the battery of the camera was completely dead. Never have had that happen to me ever before, in that setting the camera down and the next morning it's completely dead. It's happened to me 3 times over the course of that trip. It's totally fine because I brought spare battery and the charger, so I just switched them in the morning. But what I think happens is there's some sort of communication, obviously, that's going on between these two, but even when the camera is asleep, it must wake it back up. I haven't seen it do that, and maybe it doesn't visibly do that, but there is something that happens that causes the camera's battery to drain. So you need to watch out for that. If you're using this unit, you could detach it, you could turn it off. Those are all simple solutions, but it's just something that you need to watch out for. Now, one of the things that I often recommend is a lens hood over a UV filter. And in this case, I felt very justified in those recommendations because there were times, as I said, I put the camera face down in here. And because the lens hood is on, none of the glass of this lens is touching anything in the bag. And over the course of the trip, that bag got fairly dirty. You know, the bits of sand in there, as careful as I could be, there'll still be some bits of sand in there and some coconut twigs and, you know, who knows what else. But things that you don't want on the end of your lens, and by having a lens hood, you protect it. If I'd had a filter, sure, the glass would be protected, but the filter would be getting all smudged up and gross, and I would have to spend time cleaning it and wiping it and things of that sort. So I really like having the lens hood on there. And also this bag is nice because you a water bottle, and then you got your passport can be zipped up and protected separately, and you got this area for keys or anything else that you don't need access to frequently, but you do want access to. One other thing I found out, let's take the Nexus back out of there, is that with the padding out, it does fit in there quite nicely, and I could even put in an extra lens and carry it around. So it didn't, you know, not ideal, but still quite, you know, fine. And this material is thick, and there's padding even without this inside. There's padding against your back or against your side, depending on how you're carrying it, and things of that sort. So I said you could put another lens in here. This brings me to the point of, you know, I've always been a shooter that really appreciates a quality lens. And will often choose to shoot primes over a more convenient lens. That's when I'm working. What I found on vacation is I really didn't want to spend a lot of time changing lenses. And the 24-70 was nice, but I found myself wishing for maybe even the 24-105, or we'll talk about the say on the 24-70, although that's not more range, there is some more versatility in that lens. The 24-70 was a nice range for most things, and if I was shooting with a crop sensor, the 18-135 would be just about the perfect travel lens. There are times where that 135 isn't going to get you quite as close as you want to wildlife and things of that sort, but it's a nice range, and it is a very convenient range. and I certainly would be willing to sacrifice some of the changes in image quality you get when you cram a little bit more focal length into a single lens. I'm not willing to recommend, still not willing to recommend the 18 to 200. That's just too much crammed into there. You get a lot of distortion at both ends and up around 200. It's just not as sharp as I would like to see. But in my testing of the 18 to 135 and of course the 24 to 105, it's an expensive lens. It's about $900, but it is an excellent value, and it also has the IS, which brings me to the point to talk a little bit about this. I've just gotten this recently after my trip. It is the new 24 to 70 f4 IS, and if I'd had a choice in taking the 24 to 70 2.8 or the 24 to 70 f4, I would have taken the f4. A couple of reasons. One, just a little bit smaller and lighter. This thing weighs about a pound. This thing weighs just over a half a pound. So that's a pretty big difference, or I should say 16 ounces, 10 ounces. That's a pretty big difference. Two, the difference between f4 and 2.8 at a wedding, shooting critical pictures in lower light, trying to capture people moving and stuff like that, the 2.8 is pretty important. But on vacation, I don't need to do that. Or maybe in general, if you're not working for photography for a living, this lens would be just about perfect. f4 is very nice. It's a consistent f4, so it doesn't change when you zoom. And it has really snazzy macro mode. I'm going to do more of a full review of this, so I think that's about all I'm going to say right now. But the macro mode is excellent. You can get close with this lens, but not nearly as close as you can get once you switch this lens, the f4, into macro mode. So the gist of this last little bit that I've been talking about is I would definitely choose some convenience over switching lenses on vacation. You're on vacation, you want to relax, you're capturing a variety of things from one moment, maybe a busy street, to the next, a close-up of a monkey, up in the top of a tree. And you don't want to spend time switching lenses. You might miss the shots and things of that sort. So that's one thing to think about. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Oh, well, I know. Well, the last thing that found myself wondering on this trip is here I have a 5D Mark III with the GPS unit sitting on top, with the EyeFi Card inside, and thinking this is the perfect travel setup. Well, Canon has obviously beaten me to that with the Canon 6D. I think the Canon 6D is going to be the perfect travel camera. It's got the built-in GPS, it's got the built-in Wi-Fi, so you don't need this little thing on top. It's a little bit smaller, it's a little bit lighter, and that would be really nice to carry around because you don't have to worry about this extra bits up here and things of that sort. So, Vanguard bag, 5D, traveling with 5D, lens convenience. If you have questions about anything that I've covered in this kind of mishmash video, please just leave a comment down below or come find me over on the Facebook page. There's currently a trigger trap dongle giveaway. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. There's lots more videos coming. Usually they're a little bit more focused in their discussion and not quite as rambling as this one is. But I do thank you for watching, and have a nice day.